Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Bears United, and I am joined today by the light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, It's the Popo.
What's the word, brother?
Oh, nothing much, bro. Just people thinking that this podcast is called Oh No, It's the Popo.
Yeah. That's not the name of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring that up because that's personal.
But you know, some people just don't know no better. Some people just don't know no better. But that's okay. We appreciate you for listening.
We appreciate you, and we're also joined by the Savage himself, Billy. What's going on, Billy?
AJ, I see you're out of the sling. How you doing?
I'm good. I actually just went to the surgeon today. And now I just have to wear the sling like when I go out in public, because I don't want like somebody to see me and be like, oh, what's up, AJ, and slap me on the shoulder. But I can move it. Like I'm gonna show you real quick.
Oh, okay.
Get it, like up to there right now.
Okay.
So I just got my hand above my head for everybody listening. Not all the way up there, but I'm making progress, slow but steady. I'm still off for another 2 months as of now, so I'm good. I appreciate you asking though, buddy.
Are you going to be off? Like, is it going to hit a year mark that you've been off?
Yeah, so I was injured on the 28th of May. I worked for 2 days prior or after that, so the 30th was my last day, and as of now, I'm off until the 11th of May.
Wow.
So it'll be. I'm gonna need retrain. I'm gonna need like a coach. I'm gonna have to go back.
I got you, bro.
And listen to all the podcasts we put out leading up to me getting back to work.
Oh man, hey, fair or foul that I listened to. I listened to last week's podcast. And I saw that Billy had edited the part out at the beginning where like you're like fixing something and it just like cut over. I was like, this fool cut himself out. Like I introduced you
like
and everything.
Something was going wrong and like we're like, hey, wait, can we like do this or that?
But that's great content.
Wait, I don't remember that.
Billy cut out like I introduced you on the last part. I was like, did I not introduce Billy? I was like, no, I know I introduced Billy, but he cut his introduction out. Fair foul that Billy just cut out whatever he wanted, bro.
Yeah, Billy be at the house like, I'm going to edit that. I'm going to make AJ sound like he said this. I don't really sound as dumb, y'all. I promise you. I sound very educated. I'm well-spoken, but Billy be chopping some stuff up and make it sound like I speak broken English. I don't know why he do that
If you're listening, I rarely edit things out. It's only if something went wrong. And
only if it's Billy. Like, only if it's Billy speaking. He'll edit that out.
AJ goes on one of his cursing rants, you know.
Hey guys, so we are sorry that we're bringing you guys this podcast a day late. We typically are not off schedule, and if we are off schedule, we give you a heads up. So forgive us for that, but we had some stuff come up yesterday, and so we had to postpone it till today. But you guys will have this episode within a few hours. So we just want to thank you guys always for sticking around with us. And today, just to be quite transparent with our audience, and I think that having transparent with all of our audience is important. We don't really even have a topic today. So what we're going to do is
we don't need a topic.
We don't. We're going to have a conversation because I haven't talked to AJ in about a week since the last time we did our podcast. And so we're just going to kind of catch up, but we want you guys to kind of almost be like flies on the wall and just be able to feel like you guys are in the studio having a conversation with us just on current events and topics and things like that. And we're going to talk about our last two guests, because what we did want to do is we wanted to just kind of briefly talk about them, what we liked, if we thought anything was different and things like that and so forth and so on, just so that way we can, because I want you to realize when you listen to our podcast, especially when we have guests on, we don't always know what we're going to talk about with the guests, or we come in with certain topics or whatever it may be. And so it's always good to just have good dialogue about those topics that we're talking about, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn. And so last week, thanks to Henner for coming on. Henner did a phenomenal job, so much so that I think we're going to try to start moving in the direction of trying to do some of his stuff as well. And then shout out to AJ's mentor for coming on the week before that. So anyways, before we get
we got some feedback from that one.
Yes, we did. So we're going to talk about that today. Rightfully so. So we'll talk about the feedback, but before we get there, man, current events, man, what's new in the world? Is it me real quick? Is it me? Yes. I was just having this conversation with somebody. So no doubt about it, I know coronavirus is real. I've actually had people die that I know personally from coronavirus. And I actually know people that are still being infected in my family by coronavirus. So what I'm about to say, if some of y'all already cussed me out, don't want y'all to think, what the heck is he talking about? But is it weird that we don't really hear much about coronavirus anymore? since the presidential election is over and since vaccines are going out?
No, people knew that was coming.
No. And that's the crazy part is we knew all of this was coming. And they're not even trying to hide it no more. They're just so what? Do something.
That's what's crazy to me though, is like we knew it was coming, but yet we don't like hear nothing about it no more. Like it's still going on, no doubt about it. Like we know it's still going on, but it ain't like they opening stuff up. Schools are going back into session. They're
clubs is open.
Clubs is opening up. Like it's almost kind of like they're just doing it gradually, but it makes you wonder like if we were still in election season, like things would be completely different.
It's almost as if they were using this pandemic as a tool for a certain outcome. I don't know.
What was that? What would that outcome be, Billy? What would that be?
Nah, I'll leave that up in the air.
Good move, Billy. Good move. Hey, I got a current event I want to talk about. I just want to put this out here. Mr. Potato Head.
What about him?
So there's no more Mr. Potato Head. It is just Potato Head.
What?
They want to be gender neutral.
Oh, bro.
Listen, all right, I'm put it out there. That's wild. To me, like that's wild. Like I get, wanting to be inclusive, all of that. But we talking about a potato.
But what? It does something that don't even exist.
A fake potato, a plastic potato. Like
something that don't even exist. Something that don't even exist. Like at what point do we stop?
You don't. When you, as a country, I feel like you talk about civilizations that have fallen. You become so prosperous and so cushy living, you start worrying about worthless crap. Is kind of what happens. Not that everyone has it great. I'm not trying to say that, but America, everyone's doing like poverty in America. You have a fridge, you have a microwave, and you have an iPhone. That's not really poverty.
No.
Oh yeah. Don't get me started on that.
And not only that, like at what point? And this is what baffles me. So I get the inclusion stuff. I understand. Well, let me take it back. I don't understand a lot of this inclusion stuff, if I'm just being real. But I understand where people are trying to come to position inclusion into our society. My point is that the percentage of the amount of people that we are really focused on make up a very, very, very small percentage of people. But we're making laws and things like that to, essentially, we're bending it for like the smallest part of the percentage of the population, but that's not what makes up a majority of the population. Does that make sense?
So I have two more things. I just remember what I wanted to bring up that kind of go hand in hand with this, to an extent where I was just like, wow, like we live in interesting times. I'll say interesting. So the second thing is, I'm pretty sure Demi Lovato said this. Did you hear about this? She said,
one of the great thinkers of our time.
Yeah. The great Demi Lovato said,
the philosophers.
Gender reveal parties are transphobic. And I was just like, wow, that's deep. That's deep. Because I had a gender reveal.
Explain what that is to our listeners. I know what it is just because I saw.
Yeah.
I saw the post yesterday.
Yeah. So a gender reveal party is, we had one for our son before we knew he was a boy, and basically the doctor, when he finds out, he puts the gender in a sealed envelope, and then we gave it to my wife's sister.
No, we know what the gender reveal is. I'm talking about what transphobic means.
Just being. I'm not supportive of transgender babies, I guess. But that leads me to the second thing where I was like, dang, this is interesting. Because once again, I find this stuff intriguing. I think yesterday, there was a headline from New York where a baby was born, and on the birth certificate, he has 3 dads listed. I saw because all 3 of the men are like in one big relationship. There's like a name for it.
I saw
and
that.
I was like, first popped in my head is I was like, man, like it's hard enough to make 2 people work. Like let alone 3.
Bro, it's scary, bro. We are playing with creation. Like we are becoming God in a sense. And
trying.
We're trying to become God. and since like, no, this is how we're creating things, like this is how we should do things, like we are basically trying to play God, which that's not something I want to mess with, bro. Like you can't. I was thinking about that the other day too, because I was just thinking about how intricate like life is. Like I saw there was somebody made a post on Instagram where it was showing like what our planet would look like if like other planets took the place of the moon, and it was pretty trippy because like it showed, like it's a video. It shows like, Mercury wouldn't be that big, and then it shows Pluto would be very small, but then it shows like Jupiter, bro, and it's like crazy like what our atmosphere would look like if we had Jupiter. So, but my point is like, man, like that's all stuff that God created and that are millions of miles away. And so to say that God doesn't exist or this is not, again, like without getting all biblical and stuff right now, like what I see when we see all this stuff going on that's trending is that we are now as human beings trying to play God. Like we are trying to be, that's the same reason that Satan fails, because no, I am wiser than. And going back to that Demi Lovato post, it said that there was a link on there. It says, if you want more information about transphobic, whatever it is, look up this link. It's 28,000 or 29,000 scientists that have proven that gender doesn't make up your or a vagina and penis doesn't make up your gender. It's scientific, is what they're saying.
What does did it get to that point? Like, what does define your gender?
Well, no, I didn't click on the link. I was like, man, I ain't going to go look at that.
Oh, gotcha. I see. Yeah. I seen a funny meme regarding that, and it was like a T-shirt, and on the T-shirt it said something like that, like my genitalia does not define me or something like that. And then like the guy like takes a pic. The guy's recording it with his phone, and he's like on his computer, and he records the T-shirt on his computer, and then he clicks buy, and then it says pick between a female size and a male size shirt. I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of contradictory right there.
I'm trying to find this quote. There's a quote that basically, it was Tony Evans that had it, and it was actually pretty legit. It was basically saying that, truth has become subjective. Just because somebody that says something is truth, a lot of truth has really become subjective in many ways. And so I was like, oh, wow, like that makes sense. So just because, a scientist says, oh, a vagina and penis doesn't make it gender, that's not necessarily science anymore. It's a subjective opinion, but they're using that as factual information, which, now we can't even legitimize what truth is anymore. So I don't know. I don't want to get, too off script as far as with some of these crazy. I can't find it.
Kind of pivoting it towards law enforcement. Do you guys have any transgender individuals in your departments, or like has that even come up?
I don't.
You broke up there, know. Billy. What was that?
Oh, just
what was that, Billy? You broke up.
If you had transgender people in your departments.
I mean, there's 2,000 of us where I work, so I'm not sure. Not that I know of, but it does kind of make things tricky for us as law enforcement officials, just because there's different protocols. So, like, I'm not allowed to search a female. Like, I need to call a female officer to have that done. So, what if I have someone that was born with male genitalia but identifies as a female? Like, at that point, do I call a female? Like, it's just the very tricky situation and like murky waters for us to like navigate through, during these times of that we're living in.
Yeah, that is tricky.
So yeah, it is because you don't want to offend anybody. I have friends who are gay. I have friends who are not Christians. I have friends who are Muslim, friends who are atheists. So I'm always respectful of like other people's views and whatnot. But the reality of it is it does make our job like a little tricky because there's no policy for it. And right now there's no training for it. So when we encounter it, we just kind of have to figure it out on our own and hope that it's the right decision and that we won't be made an example of and become the next victim of this cancel culture.
Yep.
Yeah. Part of me understands if a certain person like doesn't feel comfortable being searched by a male officer. Like I kind of get that.
Yeah. No.
Like
absolutely.
if you're a female or
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
That it makes total sense. And I found that quote that he said. It says, "Truth is objective standard in which reality is measured." And I was like, oh wow, like that kind of stood out to me. Truth is objective standard in which reality is measured. And I was like, he was like, that's pretty much what it is or what it's become. And so,
maybe yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know. I just, you said something that's kind of crazy is like, we don't want to offend anybody anymore. But, honestly, like for me, like being offended or somebody like saying something about me or talking about, like that's what's made me stronger as a person. So at what point?
Sure.
At what point do we get to where we stop trying to offend everybody? Because what ultimately happens is it makes us weaker as people. I just got done. I literally, before we hopped on this podcast today, I did 2 presentations to school to students today. One was about anti-bullying, and the other one was about it was a motivational being change agents. But in both of those presentations, I talk about how all the adversity I've gone through, all the stuff that people have said about me, the comments that people leave, whatever it is, like that makes me stronger as a person. So the thing I appreciate about people having negative opinions about me is that they're free to think whatever they want to think. But for me, it makes me stronger not having to give in to what they think about me. But if I try to censor that person from saying these negative things about me, is that helping me or is it hurting me? And I truly believe it's actually more so hurting me, simply because if you think all these things, but you don't say them to me, then yet you might treat me one way, but you don't really feel that way about me. Where at least if you're vocal about it, I already know where we stand. And we don't necessarily got to be cool because I know where you stand, but I know at least it's vocal, or we can even, talk about it and maybe understand why you feel that way. But making and forcing people to view things a certain way or to say things a certain way, I don't think that's a good place to go down, just because now you're removing, what makes, humans so unique is their ability to be free thinkers.
And
one last thing, and I say that even for the people that think this whole transgender and all this, like whatever you think, if you truly feel the way you do about this transphobic stuff, like if you truly feel like you can't attach to gender, that's fine. You are entitled to feel that way and think that, but we shouldn't be forcing everybody else to agree with your thoughts. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I forgot what I was just about to say, man.
My bad, bro.
Well, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Billy. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I was just going to jump in, like how you said pushback in life has made you stronger. You could even look at that the macro level of like humankind. Like we're surrounded by animals that are stronger and faster than us. Nature can obviously wipe us out, but because of that pushback, we've progressed as a human race, like building machines, cars that help us get around, basically just overcoming obstacles that we are not able to face because of the pressure we're under. It's
the same principle too. You can attach this to law enforcement, because we're even seeing that in law enforcement sometimes, whereas the community is saying certain things. And even we talked about the thin blue line flag. We talked about that, but we shouldn't even have to, like, even though I told you I'm not a huge proponent of the thin blue line like that, I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, we need to get rid of it and cancel it. No, people are entitled to feel how they want to feel about it. That's what makes it so unique. I don't want to be one of those guys like, oh yeah, they don't like it, they're offended by it, so let's get rid of it. You know what I mean? And so, in law enforcement, it's the same thing on the flip side of that is, law enforcement, we got to be able to think that, people can feel the way they want to feel about law enforcement. It's okay we should go out there and educate them and give them factual information. But if they feel a certain type of way, don't automatically counsel them either, just because they don't agree with your beliefs about the law enforcement system. And so,
I just remember what I was going to say. You were talking about like confrontation and being offended. I think our age group and like our generation has a more difficult time than most, maybe the older generation as well. Just because we've seen 3 different stages of what confrontation looks like, and they're complete opposites. So like growing up, a confrontation was face to face, right? Like if somebody had something to say, they'd come to you and say it. Y'all would fight, y'all would argue, you would disagree verbally, or you would go on about your life, right? You would ignore them, whatever, right? Like that was what a confrontation looked like. throughout the years, a confrontation looked like they would say it behind your back, right? So like, we're not going to say it to your face anymore, but I'm going to tell your group of friends, or, I'm going to go tell my group of friends or a stranger about you and, try to derail you that way. And now the younger generation, a confrontation is online. So like, I'm going to tweet about you. And then when I see you in person, I don't want you to confront me about the tweet that I said about you, because now I'm going to be offended because you're confronting me about what I did. And it's like, man, this is complex. This is complex. And like, we have to show grace to the ones who don't quite understand this because it's new, right? Like I'm not used to this. Like, I grew up to where, like, if I even heard that you were saying something about me, right? Like if Ryan was like, man, Billy was kind of talking about you on this last podcast. Like, I would call Billy like, hey, are we cool? Like, I heard this, but like, most people ain't about that life. Like, most people ain't cut from that cloth. Like, they'd be like, oh my goodness, AJ's a thug. He called me and asked me if I was talking crap about him. Like, like, you think that's bad, man? You should have seen some of the stuff I seen growing up. Like, people was getting hit with bricks. And,
yeah, seriously.
Like that is not bad. But, as with anything, I try to constantly remind myself of this. Like, we've all heard like the older generation say like how much has changed in their lifetime and how frustrated they are with like certain things and how they hate change. And I would always laugh like, oh, y'all just old and grumpy. Like, get with the times, old man, or, old woman. So I try to constantly remind myself of that. That way I don't turn into that person and welcome change. But I do feel like these times there's a lot being thrown at us, and that change is not explained or broken down, or, there's not policies in place or training in place for like law enforcement officers to kind of like navigate through the complexities of this change. So,
well, you're right. Things that we are having this stuff thrown at us at like record rates, because the difference between our generation and our parents' generation is they didn't have access to all the information like we have now.
They ain't even had computers.
They didn't. It was all personal face-to-face interaction with one another. But now, technology has alleviated the ability for us to get outside of our house and go meet people and talk to people. And then COVID made it even worse. And so all we do is, connect with people virtually or, behind a social media account. So that's why we're getting it. Like, so yeah, on one sense, it's like the same current trend. They say history repeats itself, but history is repeating itself almost to an exponential level now. Like, it's compounding just because of all these other, elements that we have to it. So it's crazy, man.
Yeah. It is. I want to dive into these breakdowns just because I know we had a lot of feedback when we had Dr. Livingston on the podcast. So I just want to kind of talk about that. And then once we're done talking about that, we could talk about my man Henner, who I don't know if he drink coffee or what he takes like as a supplement, but I need that because his energy level is crazy.
Yeah, my man Henner's on another level. Like,
that energy. I need some energy. Yeah.
So I need that. Let's talk about Dr. Livingston first. First and foremost, I thought he was good. I thought he's a really nice guy. And AJ, like I said, that was my first time actually meeting him. AJ's talked nothing but very highly of him. One of the things that AJ and I and Billy discussed after that podcast was over, that was a deep conversation that needed a lot more time to basically break down. And the reason I say that is because anytime we're talking about issues like race, even the topics we're just talking about right now with gender and stuff, there's no way we can begin to scratch the surface on that with a 20-minute, 30-minute, or even an hour conversation, just because there's a lot of different layers to it. So I appreciated him coming on and him, breaking down a lot of what he believes in the history of things. But at the same time, and I even expressed this to AJ and Billy, I felt that it was one-sided a little bit, simply because it didn't give voice to those that feel on the opposite side of the spectrum. So I don't know if you guys noticed that episode. I was throwing a lot of devil's advocate questions out there, and I wanted more. But you guys also got to understand something. Dr. Livingston, he thrives in a realm where that's his focus, that's his study, that's all he does. And so it may be harder for him to venture out and see the full picture sometimes, just because that's all he does. And so what I'm getting at is, when I was listening to that episode of the podcast, I thought it was good. I learned a lot, no doubt about it. And dude is smart, bar none. But I felt it was a little one-sided. How'd you feel?
I felt good about it. I knew that it was going to start conversation and really bring out some energy in people and, bring out passion in individuals. Just to give you like a backstory, Dr. Livingston is like a brother to me. He's more than a mentor. And the reason being, of course, other than him being like a really good friend and a really good person in general, is we can have a borderline argument. And the only reason I say borderline is because I don't believe in arguing with people. Like, to me, that's a waste of time. Like, you're trying to get your point across by using emotion instead of intelligence. You're not trying to learn anything. You're trying to prove your point. Like, that's what an argument is.
Yep.
But the reason why I call it a borderline argument is because we will have heated debates about race and policing and just other things that we don't really see eye to eye on. But by the end of that conversation, one of us will walk away knowing a little bit more. Most of the times, both of us will walk away knowing a little bit more, and with a little bit more understanding of each other's perspective. But the more important thing is that's still my brother. Like I don't feel any different about him because he has a strong opinion that opposes mine. I understand that his reality is different than mine. He respects the fact that my reality is different than his. He tries to get me to see his reality, and I try to get him to see his. So, I thought it was important to have him on just because, one, we're talking about a professor who's traveled the world studying race relations and social psychology and landed at Harvard, one of the most respected universities in the world. I mean, he's been in London, he's been on each side of the coast in the United States, literally traveled the world doing this. So he's really world renowned. So when I said that, I wasn't just saying it to say it. So I wanted people to hear what his reality is. The book that he published that recently came out, it's powerful. It's powerful. And it was a hard book for me to read. We're going to be transparent here. There were points in the book where I was like, man, I'm feeling like guilty or like attacked right now. But I forced myself to read it. And by the end of the book, I was like, okay, like I get it now. Like I may not agree with like everything that he put in the book or like everything that he says all the time, but I get it. And to me, that's the importance of not only this podcast, but our existence and like our growth is being able to have a conversation with somebody and being able to learn from that person. Absolutely. Or being able to rightfully disagree.
Absolutely. And so, we talk about what's the solution to, the current state of affairs involving our society. And, I keep bringing this example up, but I'm going to keep doing it even more so just because it's so true. But my relationship with Artie and Leon and your relationship, like it's the same exact thing. Like we come from different places. We understand things differently, but it doesn't. And one of the things you said that stands so true is it doesn't change the fact that that's my brother.
Right.
And it's so true. Like, me and my sisters, if I look at like my own flesh and blood, there's a lot of things that we don't agree on. Like a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. But it doesn't change the fact that those are my sisters. It doesn't change the fact that if they were going to call me tonight, if they call me right now and say, hey, I need you, it doesn't change the fact that I'm getting on a plane. I'm not getting on a plane right now. I'm going to go help her out. Despite who we voted for, despite what they think, despite, whether or not they believe in Jesus Christ or they don't, like it doesn't change the fact. And I think now in society right now, in America, we are creating a place that if you don't agree with me, if you don't think like I think, then I'm not going to talk to you and we cannot have a relationship. And that's what's scary about it. That's why the people that, going back to the beginning of the conversation today, the transphobic stuff or the removing the Mr. off of the Mr. Potato Head, we may disagree a lot. We may disagree the whole part, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to have a conversation, and it doesn't mean I'm going to have a conversation in a hostile manner. So I totally agree. Billy, I asked Billy to see if he can pull up some of the comments from that conversation because I wanted to kind of talk about some of the comments that people were saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got two here from the It's Needed Podcast Facebook group. Someone said, listening to the most recent podcast, Dr. Livingston talks about dismantling the mechanisms that are in place that aren't fair and criminalize color. Does that mean we scrap the founding documents and attempt to rewrite them, maintain them in their simplest form, and fix things that we need to? So he said, basically, is the foundation so damaged that we can't rebuild on what is already here?
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think we have the best thing going. You look at other countries and like what they're going through and, what they've been through and how people are living. I definitely think that we have the best thing going. But don't get me wrong. Like there's definitely room for improvement. Like there's obviously room for improvement. So we have to be able to embrace that change. But no, I don't think that the foundation is so faulty that we have to tear the entire thing down and start over. Because what would that look like, right? Like we're never going to be able to create a perfect foundation that doesn't offend someone or that someone's not disadvantaged in some sort of fashion. So even if we did that, there'd be another group that would be like, well, hold on, wait, we need to re-scrap it. So in my eyes, we build upon it and make it as fair as we possibly can.
And I was going to say the same exact thing as you is I don't think we need to scrap it either. I honestly don't. I think, I just did a presentation last week to a group of people in honor of Black History Month. And I called my presentation, it's called The Harriet Way. And during that presentation, I actually, what I do is I take people through the movie Harriet. If you haven't seen the movie, you need to go watch it.
Phenomenal movie.
Yeah, phenomenal movie. But I take people through the movie Harriet, and I use clips from that movie to show exactly what Harriet Tubman went through, what obstacles she was faced with, what the people of her time were faced with. And I really start to convey a message about the importance of removing the N-word from your speech. The importance of a name and all these different things, because there's a part in the movie where Harriet, she gets to choose a name, and you can see like she's just like, wow, like really I get to choose a name. And so the reason I bring that up is because when we're sitting here in 2021, you and I are having a podcast, Billy's white, I'm black, you're both. And so like we have
I'm something I don't know what I am.
You got different people coming together, being able to have a free conversation, free of speech. And so to say that, because a lot of people have said it, oh, we are light years, we are no better off than they were during the civil rights movement or this and that, would be a fallacy. I mean, think about the work that Dr. Martin Luther King did and Malcolm X or Rosa Parks. Do you think that if they were here today, do you think that their thoughts would be the same as ours? Like, oh, you know what? It's still bad. I thought it would be like when Martin Luther King come back and be like, oh man, I thought it was going to be better than this. He'd probably be like, wow, like if we only had the opportunities that you guys have. And so that's what kind of makes me a little bit upset sometimes when we start to look at our present state of affairs as, oh man, we are still got a long way to go. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things that we can change. We can always move forward and better ourselves. But to think that we're not that much further ahead than what our ancestors were is completely false. So do you have another one,
Yeah,
Billy?
I got another one. You kind of asked this on the podcast a little bit. So I'm paraphrasing. Again, coming from the It's Needed Podcast Facebook group. If one group of people, in quotes, white people, can have the idea deeply ingrained in them that racism doesn't exist, so from what Dr. Livingston was saying, that white people have it so ingrained within them that they are racist, can it be on the opposite side too, that minorities have it ingrained in them that any negative thing that happens has an underlying, it was racist?
I think so. And here's why. And then AJ, tell me what you think. We actually talked about this before we got on this podcast today. But I'm gonna keep it transparent. I'm gonna keep it 100. If y'all want to counsel me, then counsel me. Whatever. I ain't tripping. I
heard that, brother. I heard that. Hey, that's my guy.
If you can counsel me if you want to. One of the things that frustrates me is that this whole idea that black people, and I'm saying this as a black man, that we are discriminated against and people are racist to us in every facet of our life. And if I don't get something for whatever reason, then it's because of my race and I'm already behind and stuff like that. And like, we are finding all these different reasons to essentially say that we deserve all this special treatment now because of the way our people have been treated, but the way we're still being treated. And the reason I don't think that's the right mentality to have is because, going back to Dr. Martin Luther King, he wasn't fighting for preferential treatment. He was fighting for equality. And so one of the things that I hate that I see is, for example, and I'm going to say it, this whole notion of support black business. Don't get me wrong. I love supporting black business. I love it because it's not just black people that do that. All races have done that. All genders have done that. Whatever you want to say, like, we support our people. It'd be like me. It'd be like my family owning a restaurant. I'm not going to the restaurant because I want to go to the restaurant. I'm going to a restaurant because my family owns a restaurant. I want to go support them because they own the restaurant. But when we say support black business, if somebody were to say support white business, the same exact phrase, support black business or support white business, can have completely two different meanings. So it's almost now we created, yeah,
boy,
bruh.
Hey,
so it's now
bad,
we've almost created a double standard in reverse now, where it's okay for black people to say certain things, but if a white person were to say it, then it's completely racist. And I think that's where, so going back to that conversation with Dr. Livingston, which is one that I would love to have with them, is that that's where I don't think it's fair. Is that, you know, for me, all I want to do is be treated like an equal. Do I feel like in my life there have been times where I don't feel like I was treated like an equal? Absolutely. There were definitely times based on what people were saying about me, based on some of the racial stigmas that they were saying, that I feel like, and I can legitimately justify why I felt like I wasn't treated like an equal. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden I want you to treat me better now. I don't want that person, that employer, whoever it is, to say, oh, I'm going to treat him better because he's black. No, I don't want you to treat me better. Just treat me as an equal. But I also, at the same time, I don't need you. We shouldn't now have the opportunity to say all this stuff in the name of racism, in the name of promoting black people, that if a white person said it, is now considered racist. Like, that to me is a double standard that I don't think is right.
So before I give you my answer, I'll say this is I myself have faced blatant racism. I myself have found myself in situations where I've had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. I've been told the only reason I got hired was because of what's the phrase where you need a certain amount of minorities working at a business,
the affirmative action.
Affirmative action's the only reason why I got hired. You name it. I've found myself in like very difficult situations, but something you will never, ever hear me do is complain about that. And the reason why it goes back to what we talked about earlier in the podcast is I am a firm believer in you grow through what you go through. So every hurdle that I've had to jump allowed me to jump higher. Every time that I've had to push through an object in the path of my destination has made me stronger. So when I face opposition, I face it with a different mentality, knowing that when I'm done with this opposition, I'm going to come out wiser and stronger. With that said, I'll say I'm 50-50 on the answer. And the reason being is, one of my pet peeves is the race card that's constantly played by somebody, meaning you only did this because I'm black. You only did this because I'm a minority. You only did this. You only did this. You only did this. And it's like, you only get to play that so many times. Like everything that happens in your life is not because X, Y, and Z. Like at some point, like we need to have accountability. And this is coming from somebody who just told you that I faced blatant racism and had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. But I didn't see myself as a victim in those situations. What I did is I went, okay, these are my options. I could give up and I could say it's because of my race or because of my background or because of the way that I talk and carry myself and the way that I speak broken English. Or I could go, I'm gonna work twice as hard and get what I want because that's what I want. Those are options you face. So that's why that's a pet peeve of mine. And that's why I'm 50-50 on it. The other reason I'm 50-50 on it is I understand the time in which we live. And I don't think a lot of people do, meaning that my grandmother lived in a time where racism was very, 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 very much alive, right? And I would say her day-to-day life was affected due to her race. I also understand that when she had her kids' lives were affected because of their race up until a certain age. And what they didn't experience, they experienced secondhand from my grandmother because she was a caring woman. She passed down her knowledge to her kids. I understand that's only 2 generations away and that knowledge is still being passed down to me. And just to give you an example of what I mean by this, if you have a woman who's sexually assaulted, the chances of her not wanting to be around men in like secluded areas or like a one-on-one setting is probably very high. Like if she was sexually assaulted by a man. So the same principle applies with race, right? Like if you have somebody who has been wrongfully done or their parents have been wrongfully done by a white person, they still have that resentment and uncomfortability when it comes to somebody white. It just may look different. It may be internally instead of like physically removing themselves from the situation. It may be having their guard up or whatnot. So it's hard to answer that question with a yes or no. Just because I'm 50-50.
Well, I don't think it is a yes or no either, though.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's very circumstantial. You know, like there are people who legit have reasons to have their guard up, you know, and to be fearful and to play the race card, right? Like there's racism alive today. Like we talk about it all the time. But at the same time, it frustrates me when people continue to play the race card because it takes away the validity of when something actually racist happens.
Yes. And well, I've said that before. And so, you know, I again, going back to the presentation I did, in the slide I had is I do this thing called Who Am I? It's a game I do with the kids called Who Am I? And I basically give some characteristics about this person before I reveal who it is. And one of those people I revealed was Barack Obama. Now, without getting political and whether or not people like Obama or not, or if you're Democrat or Republican, one thing that Obama accomplished was something that no man has ever accomplished before, which was he was a black man that became the leader of the free world. And the reason that's so important, you know, because you have those that say, well, why do you have to throw the black person in there? Because you have people that always like, why do you see, you guys are the ones that bring up the race all the time. Why do you have to say black man? How come you guys can't be white, you know, man occupy the leader of the free world? Well, the reason that's important is because somebody like my grandfather, who's going to be 97 in May, who lived and saw what it was like on plantations and saw what the civil rights movement was like, and went to World War II and had to fight for a country even though he wasn't treated fairly. Do you understand how significant that is for him and in his kids and in his grandkids? And so that's why it's important to acknowledge those things, and we can't take that fact away from it. And I think did we bring this up on the podcast last week? I don't know if we did. We didn't actually, but the whole conversation that I had, I made a post last week, I think it was, where the officers arrested that guy, the black kid that was walking home from Walmart. It was a safety check and they arrested him. And when they were walking him home, they essentially, everything was fine. He didn't want to stop and talk to police, but they kept pushing the issue. And ultimately they arrested him because he was walking in the middle of the roadway. And so I brought up in that video that, hey, one of the reasons why I said, you know, this is what's sad for, you know, the minority communities when they see things like this only perpetuates the stereotypes and make them more in fear of law enforcement as it is. So then one of my followers was like, well, why do you have to bring the race card up? And I said, you know what, just because this is not racial for you doesn't mean it's not racial for somebody else. I am the police officer and I understand, like, yeah, the officer's intentions were probably not based because of his race. They probably didn't necessarily, they stopped this dude because it was a call for service. Somebody called on this guy. So, you know, and when they came out, they were actually, you know, treating the dude pretty nice and all that stuff with respect. But to that black guy, do you think he felt that way? Do you think he felt like when they stopped him and he said, I don't want to talk and I'm fine? Do you think that he knew all the other stuff that went into it? So the reason I brought up the race issue is because now for that kid, he will, for the rest of his life, have that down in the back of his mind as this was a bad interaction with law enforcement. It was because I was black. Whether you want to realize that or not, whether you want to just be like, oh, well, he didn't need to bring up race. No, that's his reality. So that's why it is important to bring up race on certain things, because for some people, their reality is, I was stopped and targeted because I was black walking in the middle of the street, which in our history of law enforcement, it is factual. It is true that people were at a time and place stopped for the color of their skin. That's where we got racial profiling from. But going back to AJ's point is, you know, we can't always say as a black person that everything is motivated by race, or we can't always fall back on it's because my race. So I fall in the middle of it. And so going back to the conversation with Dr. Livingston, I wanted it to kind of be from a more of a neutral standpoint, just because that's how I view things, as being more neutral, trying to understand both sides of the equation, you know, and trying to make sure that everybody has a voice at the table, making sure that white person has a voice to say, hey, look, I hate feeling like I'm always the racist person when I'm not racist. I'm just trying to learn and understand. Like, they canceled my man Chris Harrison from The Bachelor as the host because he said something that was perceived as being racial, which, if you ask me, it wasn't really racial. It wasn't racial at all. He was actually just trying to get context to the whole situation. So ultimately what I'm getting at is that I think everybody needs a voice at the table. These issues are complex, and it is good for us to bring on people like Dr. Livingston so to get a different outlook and understand. So I'm glad that you guys were comfortable enough to with us to voice how you felt. And I appreciate that. Like, that is important because that's where growth occurs, is that you have enough boldness to come forth and say, I didn't agree with that. That's okay. Like, me and AJ don't want you to always agree with us. But what we do want is we do want to be able to have this dialogue with one another so that way we can move forward together.
Yeah. And I'm happy with the result, not only because of the dialogue that it's created now in this podcast today, but the dialogue that will continue to happen, like while you're listening to this podcast a week from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and the dialogue that happened online, like on the Facebook groups and the Instagram groups, and amongst our mutual listeners. So, you know, to me, that's very vital, just for growth is to have those conversations. So,
I'm gonna put Billy on the spot real quick. He's going to hit me for this, but don't edit this out.
He gonna edit this out. Yeah, we both said he gonna edit this out.
Nah, but this is serious though. On a serious level, I'm gonna put him on the spot. How does it feel, Billy, as a white guy, listening to the banter? I don't want to call it banter, but listening to these issues and always being made to feel like you're racist or your people. And I'm just using that for the context of this conversation. Your people are racist, because people need to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll edit this part out, but no. I don't think too much of it, only because I just know it's not true. Like, human nature is sinful, if we want to get religious or whatever you want to call it. So there will be sin. Discriminating against someone or hating someone because of their skin color, no matter what skin color, that's wrong. It's sinful. So that will always exist. But when someone comes on and is talking about how America is so deep in it, it's in our veins, and white people can't get over it, I know that's not true, so I don't really take much offense to it. It's more of just like, I don't really know how to take it, if that makes any sense. Because I just kind of brushed it off. I'm like, that's just not true. I mean, I work for Ryan, guys. He's black.
I have one black friend, y'all.
No, I don't want to do that. But like, he's in a boss position, and I don't even think about race. I think he's a great businessman, and I like being attached to that. So it's in my life, it's just I don't pay attention to that because it's just so far off. I'm like, it's kind of ridiculous.
That ain't what Billy told me the other day. He was talking about Ryan. He called you a blank. I was like, oh.
See, there you go. You got to edit out Billy or AJ's cuss words. But no, and the reason I asked you that though, Billy, is because, like, again, I feel right now like everybody deserves to have a voice, and we're pushing this agenda like, oh, we need to be heard, we need to be this, we need to be that. It's like, yeah, that's okay. You, like, black people, we can have a voice, but don't automatically silence the voice of others that, need a voice as well, because, it kind of goes back to the whole thing I said earlier, is like, we're talking about a small percentage of people that have legitimately, like, racial, like, angst against other people. Like, that's only a small percentage and like, that's true. Like, I can legitimately say that. Like, honestly, how could somebody, like, if we had to identify like what in our lifetime is like something that was motivated by race, like, I guarantee you a lot of the people that we would talk to would have a difficult time actually specifically identifying something that was geared solely based off of that person of the color of their skin. Like, if we're talking about issues, like, tell me right now what has happened to you in your life, that was purely motivated by their race. I think we would have a hard time compared to my in-laws, or not my in-laws, my grandfather, who could probably go back and give me time after time after time after time after time. Mm-hmm. And so I just think, I hope I'm making sense, but I have a lot of thoughts in my head. Yeah.
Did I share this? Did I ever share the story about my buddy growing up? He's a white guy. His dog was blind.
Mm-mm.
I never shared it. It's kind of a funny story. It's kind of not, but it immediately popped in my head when you said that. So I'll just share it just to put it out in the universe, I guess. So growing up, the school that I went to was predominantly black. I mean, like predominantly black, like they're like 80-90%, right? We had like a good Hispanic, Laotian, and then like I would say the smallest percentage was white. Like we didn't have that many white students.
That's how my school was.
So, but one of the white kids was like new. I want to say, actually, I think this was middle school. No, it was freshman year. But one of like the newer kids came in like halfway through the year, and you could tell he was just like lost and terrified. Like he was roaming the halls. His eyes were big. Like, oh my goodness. He kind of had like this country twang to him. I was like, yeah, all right, man. Just, hey, stick with me, man. Like I got you. Like I'll show you the ropes. So I found out he lived like 2 streets down from me. So I'm like, oh, we need to kick it, man. Like we play basketball, curveball. Like, we just walk around, ride our bikes, do whatever. Just get into trouble as kids. So I introduced him to my little crew. We start hanging out, right? And we would always meet at his house because his house was like in between, was like the middle spot in order to get to my other friend's house. So we would each travel half the distance and end up at his house. And we'd be out there playing football, basketball. We'd be sweating in the summer. And he had never let us in his house. Like, we'd be like, man, let us get some water. He'd bring the hose out. Like, get some water from the hose. So one day it's just me and him. And we're out, we're playing some game like tag or football or something like that. And I'm like, bro, I'm not drinking from this hose no more. Like, let me in your house and get like a cup of water. I need some ice water, bro. Like what's up? I can't come in your house. So he's like, all right, yeah, you can come in. So I come in and he's like, but if my grandfather gets here, you got to leave. I'm like, that's cool. Like maybe his grandfather don't want me being in his house. He think I'm gonna steal something, right? Whatever. So we come in and his dog starts tripping. He got this little like lap dog, this little like cotton ball looking dog. He start running around, he running into the couch, sliding into stuff, right? So I jump on the couch because I don't do other people's dogs.
It's like
we're talking about this, right? So I'm on the couch, like, hey, get your dog, bro. And it's like this little itty bitty lap dog. And he's like, he's blind. And I was like, well, he know where I'm at because he's looking in my direction barking. So we start like teasing the dog, like I'm moving the couch, like he don't know the couch is moved, so he don't like get to me. So then I'm drinking the water and my buddy David is like, well, I need to go to the bathroom. So he go to the bathroom in the kitchen by myself. And his truck pulled into the driveway. And I'm like, oh, that must be his granddad. Well, I'm going to finish this water. And then I'm going to leave the same way I came in through the front door, right? Like, I didn't know how to sneak out the house, right? He told me that part. So his grandfather comes in, sees me, and was like, hey, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm David's friend. He let me in for a drink of water. And as soon as he heard me talk, I think it clicked like, oh, you got some. He called me every N-word in the book. Get the F out of my house, you dirty N-word, blah, blah, blah. David, I can't believe you let him in here. I mean, he was going ham. And I'm like, and I was just like laughing at the time, like, bro, chill. Like, if I beat you up in your house, like, you rest like, but yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those stories like.
No, but that's people need to hear those stories. And so.
Yeah. And that's why I shared it. Like, just because, people are like, you never experienced racism. It's like, well, that's. Yeah, I was a freshman in high school then, and he was like straight up, get your black blue.
And I've had people, not to that extent, say stuff like that to me, and that's why I say, like, I think everybody needs a voice. Everybody, we can't go so far to say, oh, cancel this person because they said that, but then at the same time, we can't go as far to say, oh, we're just going to start changing stuff just to appease a certain part of the population.
And the cool part about that is after that happened, I didn't think every old white person was racist.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I ain't walk around like, oh, everybody racist. You know what I'm saying? This dude, he was probably raised different. He was older. Like, back in his time, that's probably how he was taught. Like, that's probably how his parents told him. Like, hey, when you see a black person, let him in your house, whatever. So, I was just like, all right, whatever. I laughed about it. Like, that's your fault. That's something you got to deal with, not me.
Well, that kind of leads us to our one has to go. So white people, black. I'm just playing. That's a joke, y'all. But y'all. So
this is the last episode of the podcast.
Yeah, we about to get canceled.
Yeah, we are. Oh no.
No, Billy's like, I'm editing. That's a joke, y'all. That's a freaking joke.
This whole conversation is just gonna be chopped up.
Let me lead that one. So white people, Jews.
But you know what? That's what's funny is and I'll end it on this because I don't want to run long, but that's what I always loved about Chappelle Show. Like Dave Chappelle was a genius. Like that dude was able to take a lot of these difficult conversations, have them in a comical way, but really address a lot of the issues. And so the thing is funny is like if he would do that stuff now, he would probably get canceled just like everybody else. At one point in time, people did try to cancel my man. And so,
he talks about it in one of his specials.
Yeah, he does. And so like he's a prime example of, you know what? Yes, there is a time and place. I'm not going to lie. I've been offended before. There are times that I truly feel that I was not treated fairly because of the color of my skin. No doubt about it. I know that because of similar situations like AJ, but it has not been every single moment in my life. As a matter of fact, the moments in my life that I didn't get something compared to those where I did get it, it wasn't because of the color of my skin. It's because of the work that I did or the work that I didn't do. So there were definitely times where I didn't get something because of like who I was as a person. People didn't like my skin complexion. But for the most part, a lot of times it's either because somebody's hating on me or I just wasn't qualified for the position. And so, yes, it exists, but we don't need to have all these knee-jerk reactions the same way we talk about police work. When a police officer screws up, it doesn't mean we just go and get rid of the whole system all of a sudden. It's like, no, how do we fix the issue with this specific officer or this specific agency or whatever, as opposed to just throwing out the baby with the bathwater. So, I know we kind of got on a tangent today, and we didn't even get to talk about Henner, but we'll maybe bring that up the next time. I don't want to get too long on it, but I thought that was a good discussion, and I wanted to bring in your guys' comments from our Facebook page because, like I said, we appreciate that feedback and we see it. No doubt about it. We see it.
And what was cool is even like a lot of them, even if they were disagreeing, it was like respectful conversation. Like people were actually talking. They weren't just like ranting. So we do appreciate that.
And that's
I'm not gonna lie though,
that's the dopest
my
part
wife
about
started reading it to me.
I was actually talking with Doc. What was that?
It was your bootleg internet jacked up. Go ahead.
You froze.
Go ahead. Yeah, I heard you say you left off. You were actually talking to. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
You froze your bootleg internet, man.
Bro, this is the first time we froze in a long time. You can hear him though. You got us? You there?
It is. You ain't pay your bill?
Man, whatever. Can you hear us now?
You ain't pay your bill?
You can fix. Can you fix this, Billy?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear
harder,
me,
man? We can hear AJ. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Billy getting mad now. Hold on, let me come back in.
Said, you're making my editing harder.
So
we're leaving all this.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, that was funny.
All right, so you left off.
What I was about to say, man.
You said you were actually talking to Dr. Livingston.
Oh yeah, I was talking with Dr. Livingston the other day, and he was just like, complimenting the podcast and like how we did and whatnot, and the whole podcast realm is new to him. Like he don't do technology or nothing like that. He was like, oh, it's kind of cool. You guys did a really good job. Just really building us up or whatnot, and he asked, he was like, well, how receptive do you think your audience will be to the podcast? And I was like, man, something like you need to know is like our listeners are like motivating for me and reassuring to me just because I know they're willing to have like a conversation and like a tough dialogue. Like, and even after listening to that, like they'll have a conversation about it. And it's cool because like, that's the profession. And these are like people who are thinking about going into the profession. So you're absolutely right. Like we see the dialogue, we appreciate it. We hear the conversations, we read them and we love it because that's what we want.
It was a fun fact for you guys. So I was sitting on the couch watching the movie with my wife or something like that. And so she starts to read like some of the comments off, and I'm like a little kid. I'm like covering my ears, like I can't hear you. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So, but no,
this was the dumbest.
Oh man. So, but I went back and I read him, and like I said, I appreciate him because again, that's how we improve. And again, success is built off of creative dialogue. So, that being said, well, anybody got a legit one has to go today? I didn't do my homework today, man. I've been busy.
All right, I got one. I'll make it up on the fly. All right. One has to go forever. All right.
Forever.
Shoes. Forever, ever. All right. Shoes. You never wear shoes. Pants. That's including shorts. So you just got to walk around in your drawers. All right. A shirt. No tank top, nothing. Or I don't know, cars, like transportation. Ooh, yes, that's tough. That's
I'll
tough.
go
I made
with
it up for a
shirt
spot.
because I'll just wear a jacket. Or a
No,
or a
none of
sweater.
that. No, like top whatsoever. Like you could never wear a top.
All right, pants, because if you got it, flaunt it.
Oh man! I don't think I've ever heard Billy laugh that loud. Hey, you better not edit that out, Billy. You better not edit that out. Oh man!
I don't appreciate everyone laughing at me about
Hey,
that.
I'm with him. No,
He said
I'm
that
going with
with-
Billy. I'm going with Billy.
He
Man.
said that with confidence too.
Oh man!
Oh man, hey, I gotta go with shirt. I got skinny legs, man. Like I skip leg day, so I don't want everybody seeing my legs. I wear jeans all year round.
Oh man! Yeah, I might go
I'll
with
go-
my
I'll go with
shirt.
shirt.
I might go with my shirt too.
Says the two guys
Yeah,
that work
yeah.
out all the time. All right.
No, I wanted to go with pants, but then I didn't want my wife to be like, "Nah, you should go with your shirt."
Yeah, like oh, what you trying to show? What you flaunting over there?
Oh man! Well, y'all, we appreciate you guys as always. Seriously, this was good. I hope you guys enjoy this dialogue. We will be back next week with some with actually more of a topical conversation about law enforcement specifically. So every now and again, we kind of like to do some recaps, and then we got to do a couple back-to-back recordings because Billy's baby is going to be here sooner than we know it. So shout out to Billy on the new baby going to be born. And so with that being said, I mean, you guys got anything else in closing?
Have a good week.
Yeah.
Don't be a victim, be a victor.
Oh, look at him getting all, Aristotle on us and stuff. You know what I'm saying? All right, y'all. Well, we love you guys. And, hey, stay committed and just make sure if you guys need prayer for anything, please reach out to us on Facebook or something like that so we can pray for you. Wish you guys nothing but the best in best life and be blessed. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.